November the 21st, 2016, and Jill Walker tries to wake her daughter to go to school. Suddenly realizing that she's not responding, she's frantically panicking, calling 911 and trying to perform CPR. What had happened to her beautiful 16-year-old daughter between having ice cream with her father the evening before to being found the next morning unresponsive in her bed? Emma Jane Walker was just 16 years old, a vibrant high school junior and a dedicated cheerleader. Described by her family as empathetic, independent and fiercely stubborn, Emma was an honor student who loved animals and dreamed of spending her life saving others as a neonatal nurse. This is True Crime with Emma. You can follow me on YouTube or TikTok, or listen to the podcast on Spotify and Apple. We are going to look at the case of Emma Walker. Emma's descent into this nightmare began in 2014, during her freshman year, when she met 16-year-old William Riley Gould. Riley was a couple of years older, a star wide receiver for the Central High School football team. To the community, he wasn't a brutish jock. Friends described him as a bit nerdy, a jokester, and a top student. He would later go on to play Division III college football at Maryville College. At first, it was a typical high school romance, but as months turned into years, Riley's affection curdled into severe pathology. Court records later exposed the terrifying depth of his control. Riley began dictating who Emma could talk to and what clothes she was allowed to wear. He blocked male classmates on her social media accounts and demanded her phone passwords. When Emma's parents, Mark and Jill Walker, noticed the emotional toll it was taking on their daughter, they stepped in, severely restricting Riley's access to their home. But Riley simply moved the abuse online. They later uncovered horrifying Snapchat logs. In one particular venomous exchange, Riley raged at Emma, typing, "Fuck you, you piece of shit. I'm going to check the obituary." Realizing how toxic the relationship had become, Emma tried to break the cycle. She officially ended things and refused to answer his calls. Riley, unable to cope with the loss of total control, escalated his behaviour to a frightening level. He bombarded her with hundreds of messages a day, created fake social media accounts to track her movements, and threatened to take his own life if she didn't take him back. Then on Friday, November the 18th, things took a deeply bizarre turn. Riley stole a 9mm handgun from under the seat of his grandfather's vehicle. When his grandfather realised the weapon was missing, he panicked, fearing that his emotionally unstable grandson was going to use it to take his own life. But Riley had a different target in mind. That very night, Emma received frantic, anonymous text messages claiming that Riley had been kidnapped by dangerous men and thrown into a ditch. Emma and a friend rushed out to the location specified in the texts. There, she found Riley lying in the tall grass, claiming he had been abducted but was completely unharmed. It didn't take long for Emma to realise the entire event was a staged, pathetic ploy for her attention and sympathy. Friends testified that Emma left the scene furious and deeply unsettled. The psychological warfare peaked the next evening. On Saturday night, Emma was staying at a friend's house when a mysterious figure dressed entirely in black appeared in the yard. The prowler began aggressively banging on the windows and doors, trying to force their way in. Trapped inside, a terrified Emma texted a friend, "I genuinely thought I was going to die. I'm walking to my car and I see a guy completely dressed in black walking back and forth. Please know I love you guys." When she called Riley in a panic, he miraculously rushed over to protect her, playing the part of a heroic saviour. He managed to get there incredibly quickly. Prosecutors would later argue that Riley was the man in black, weaving an intricate web of fear so Emma would feel she had no choice but to run back into his arms. But Emma still refused to restart the relationship, and so Riley changed his tactics. Sometime around 12:30 a.m. on Monday the 21st of November, Riley snuck out of his college dorm room at Maryville College. He called a friend, casually asking a highly specific question: "How do you remove fingerprints from a gun?" Driven by rejection and rage, Riley drove to the Walker family home. He knew the layout of the house perfectly. The The parents' bedroom was on one side of the home. The children's bedrooms were down a hallway on the opposite side. Emma's bedroom was at the very end of that hall, her bed positioned tightly against the far back left corner of the house. Standing outside in the pitch black, Riley raised his grandfather's 9mm pistol. He aimed directly at the brick exterior siding, right where he knew Emma's head would be resting on her pillow. He fired 2 shots through the wall. One bullet lodged harmlessly into the drywall. The second bullet tore through the exterior siding, entered the bedroom and struck 16-year-old Emma in the head, just behind her left ear. She died instantly in her sleep, never knowing what happened. Riley's college roommate later testified that Riley snuck back into his dorm room at roughly 4:45 a.m, acting as if it were a normal night. At 6 a.m, Emma's mother, Jill Walker, walked down the hallway to wake her daughter for school. She found Emma pale and completely unresponsive. In a harrowing 911 call later played for the jury, Jill's screams echo as she frantically attempts to perform CPR on her cold daughter, assuming Emma had suffered a sudden stroke or aneurysm. It wasn't until paramedics arrived, turned Emma over, lifted her blood-soaked hair that they discovered the small, neat bullet wound. This is what's very interesting about this case. There was hardly any blood at the scene, making it confusing initially for the paramedics and the family to decipher what had happened to Emma. News of the murder rippled through Knoxville. Riley immediately began his public performance of a grieving boyfriend. He took to Twitter, launching into long emotional statuses. He wrote, "To think that I will never get to hug you again. I love you, Emma Jane Walker." But investigators weren't buying the act. Cell phone towers placed his phone at the Walker home at the exact time of the shooting. Yet the definitive break in the case didn't come from forensics. It came from Riley's own friends. 2 of his closest buddies, Alex and Noah, became deeply suspicious. Riley began acting paranoid and frantically talking about disposing of a gun. Recognizing that their friend might be a killer, they made a courageous choice. They went straight to the Knox County Sheriff's Department. Detectives set up a sting operation. They wired Alex and Noah with hidden microphones, transmitters, and a hidden video camera inside a key fob. Noah invited Riley over under the pretense of playing video games. On the hidden camera footage, Riley can be seen pacing, visibly sweating and pleading with his friends to lie to the police. He tells them to claim they were all drunk and hallucinating when he mentioned a gun. Then Riley leads them to his stepfather's house, retrieving a trash bag from the basement. Inside that bag was a chilling toolkit: gloves, tennis shoes, black duct tape, the exact all-black clothing worn by the neighborhood prowler, and the grandfather's stolen 9mm pistol. As Riley eagerly explained his plan to wrap the gun in trash bags, weigh it down and throw it into the Tennessee River, Alex can be heard on the audio tape exclaiming in feigned shock, "Oh my God, that's a real gun." That was the signal for law enforcement. Within 60 seconds, heavily armed officers swarmed the vehicle. Riley Gaul was arrested on the spot, the murder weapon and a roll of duct tape literally in his hands. At his trial in May 2018, the defense team put forward a truly bizarre argument. They admitted Riley fired the shots, but claimed he never intended to harm Emma. Instead, they argued he was an immature, desperate 18-year-old who wanted to shoot the wall to terrify her so that he could once again play the hero, rush to her side and save her from the imaginary shooter. The prosecution tore this defense to shreds. They argued a shooter doesn't fire at head level into a bedroom wall if they only mean to scare someone. In a fascinating and modern forensic twist, prosecutors even brought up Riley's extensive history playing the video game Call of Duty. They proved to the jury that Riley was highly practiced in a gaming technique known as wall banging, the tactical act of killing an enemy by predicting their exact physical location and shooting them directly through a solid wall. The jury didn't buy the defense's hero narrative. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the 8-man, 4-woman jury found William Riley Gaul guilty on all counts, including first-degree premeditated murder, stalking, and tampering with evidence. As the verdict was read, audible gasps and deep sobs erupted from the gallery. Riley, who had been out on a $1 million bond, was immediately handcuffed and led away. He was sentenced to life in prison. Under Tennessee law, he must serve a mandatory 51 years before he is even eligible to look a parole board in the eye. Today, Emma Walker's name lives on through scholarships and memorials, but her case remains a textbook, devastating case study in the fatal progression of teenage dating violence. It stands as a grim reminder that the most dangerous threat to a young life isn't always a stranger hiding in the dark. Sometimes it is the person claiming to love you, standing outside your window, waiting for the lights to go out. That was the case of Emma Walker. If you like my content, please remember to like, subscribe and follow, and press the notification button so you can join us next time.